operate Zoom. I'm a marketing consultant. I've been working for myself for about 16 years. I've worked closely with Emily and Events and PR on awards for a long time. I have a really good track record of getting people to the finals. Probably about 95% of my awards get to finals, and I've entered businesses from all sectors in all categories, and I have had a number of winners in this sustainable category. So that's just briefly about me. Entering the awards, so this, please just raise your hand or pop it in chat, because I can see 4 of you, but not the others. So I might not see you if you raise your hand. So if not, but please chime in with any answers, any questions at all. So the awards, the key points are, it's an online submission. Back in the day, we used to do printed ones and have to physically get them to a place. But now with the advent of digital, it's a really simple form to enter online. I think that some of you have actually entered awards before, from what you said. So you'll have been through the process before, but Events and PR have made it very easy in terms of the form. So generally, in practical terms, I work on Word. It's useful just to check word count and things like that, but it means you can work away on that. If you prefer to go straight in and use the form, you can just use, again, it's really easy. You just need to register your account, and then you can work in that, and you can save it and return to it if you'd like to. Well, it's like bills coming back in. To actually do it, again, most of you will have that information ready. Probably take you 2 to 3 hours to complete. And you've got the first question is around your business. So it will talk about, on the form, it gives you a tip, which we'll come on to that in a moment. But you can choose to focus, depending very much on your business, and depending on, James explaining that all the businesses in the network are at varying stages on their journey for sustainability, whatever your sustainable goals are. So you can choose either to focus on the business as a whole, or you can just pick one particular initiative and expand on that. Again, what you're always looking to do is make an impact, get the judges' attention really early on, because they have lots of entries to go through. So you want to really grab their attention. So if you have got a green initiative that is working really well, and you've had some particularly good results and made a real impact, particularly in the last 12 months, that would be a great one to focus on, rather than trying to cover absolutely everything. Again, thinking about small changes, those can often make the biggest impact. Something interesting that somebody may not have been doing on the green agenda. Evidence, 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 evidence. I say the word so many times when I'm working with clients and running these masterclasses. It's not good enough just to say, well, we're the best at this because we've done more than anybody else. You've got to prove it. And you can upload the evidence in forms of photos, testimonials, graphs, pie charts, whatever format. I think it's a maximum of 10 items, and it will tell you, I think the maximum file size is 5 megabytes, I think, Emily, is it?
Yeah, that sounds right. It's definitely 10, and I think it is 5 meg.
Yeah.
But what you can do, say if you have lots of photos, is pop them on one document instead.
Yeah, absolutely. And Emily very kindly put there, if you don't have time to do it yourself, then you can use somebody like me to write it. I will just say, as a caveat on that one, I still need you to tell me what you've been doing so that I can write about it. But yes, so that's always an option if you haven't got the time, or you feel sometimes you'll find it's actually really helpful working with somebody else. And I don't mean just with me, working with a colleague, or working with sometimes a business buddy. We've all done networking, we do networking, we've got other people who aren't in our business. And it's really, really good idea to have a brainstorm with somebody who isn't in the business, because they will think of things that you haven't. So an example of that, I was working with a lady in completely different towards, not a green sector at all. And she set up her business 17 years ago. And when we had our initial call, I said, we need to be thinking of your achievements over that period relating to the category. And she said, well, I was talking to my husband about this, and he just instantly rattled off things that I'd completely forgotten about, that I've achieved, that I've moved beyond. So at that point I said, well, it sounds like I should be having a conversation with him. So I did. I had about an hour on the phone with him. So somebody outside of your business, a family member, again, you will talk about things that you've done, and it's very easy to forget about them. So an external pair of eyes, pair of ears, and lots of suggestions and observations about what you've achieved. And it's easy sometimes to take those things for granted. So this is a great opportunity to actually reflect on everything that you've achieved. And sometimes when you're looking at some business figures around it, again, I've worked with clients who've looked at their performance. They've looked at some of the key performance indicators, and they realize there might be something that is no longer relevant, or an opportunity will pop out to think, oh yeah, actually, we haven't done anything on that for some time. So again, it's a really good opportunity to review your business and regroup and think, right, this is what we're going to be doing for the next 3 years, 5 years, whatever your timeline is. Why doesn't this thing move on? Really sorry, it's just not. Right, there we are. So the first criteria, which is 500 words, is tell us about what your business does. So this is where, as we were saying, if you were making a pitch to a potential customer, if you're on your networking meeting, what are the things that you would be saying about your business, about your services, about your customers, about your niche, about your USP? And again, you've got 500 words, which might sound quite a lot. It's not, because you're all here, because you're all working with successful businesses. You'll have a lot to say. My top tip for this is, again, think about what will make the most impact. So I usually say to people, if you're listening to the news, you're reading the news in the newspaper or online, what do you see? First of all, you see headlines. And then if you want to click on it, if you're online, you can then read more. If you're reading a good old-fashioned paper, you'll see the headline. Then you'll see the next paragraph, which will give you a bit more information about the story. It will give you the whole story. But if you then want to read on, you can read on. But the point is, those headlines are what's getting our attention. So I would avoid the temptation of saying, we started out in 2005, and initially we were in this building, and then we moved to this building, and then we took on 10 more. Starting at the end sometimes will make much more of an impact. So if you've got a really good headline there, you can make this section focus specifically on green. But if you are considering other submissions, other categories, if you keep this relatively neutral in terms of your sustainable initiatives, you can then just repurpose that for the other categories, because the question for that one is the same. If sustainability is an important part of your business, then I would definitely include it in this first section, because that is, it's a key part of your brand and your values and what you're standing for, and why you're in business. So that is, keep the headlines in there, talk about the business, maybe talk about the history. If there's something particularly relevant about that, you will be putting the very, very first part of the form, you'll be talking about your business, your trading style, membership of any professional organizations, how many employees you have, full-time, part-time, apprentices and things. So the judges will have, and also your financials. Again, I'm just briefly focusing on financials. In the first section, you'll be asked about your turnover for this year. I think it actually says 2021. You'll be looking at your most recent financial year in the last 12 months. And again, for some people, that will straddle this. Your financial year might not be a calendar year. It will vary, but aim to have your turnover and your profit for the last 12 months. And then there's an option to include your projected turnover and profit for the next 12 months. It says optional. I would always complete that. Again, if it doesn't neatly fall into your financial year and this calendar year, just extract the information that would be most appropriate making sure you're looking to the previous 12 months and the next 12 months and what you're forecasting to do. You can, with financials and probably in the supporting evidence, you can look back and see what your turnover and profit was when you started, and you can then start calculating to say, okay, what has our growth been? And again, this is about environmental impact, but sustainable businesses are also businesses that have grown steadily, and they are sustainable from a business point of view, as well as in this case, from an environmental impact and enhancing environmental performance point of view. Now, Emily, there's a few chats I've seen. I'm not going to open my chat. Those questions.
Yes, so it's just a question about the deadline. So we do have the deadline in place at 3 p.m. this Thursday. However, with sort of the short time now to complete, I can sort of let you know that we will be announcing a short extension, but that won't be announced until after this sort of deadline. So the way we'll do that is if you make sure to register in the categories that you're looking to enter, we take all of that into consideration, and then we'll announce sort of the extension following that. So it could be sort of a few days to a week, but we'll let you know as long as you're sort of registered on the website.
Were there any other questions?
No, not in the chat. Yeah.
No. Okay. So moving to the next question, this is looking at what commitment have you and or your business made to reducing or removing your impact on the environment in the last 12 months? So again, they're going to be all sorts. There's a whole variety of sustainability initiatives. So it could be about solar, it could be about local suppliers, it could be heating and energy, it could be encompassing your staff training, your green targets. Do you have an environmental policy? You could share that in the supporting evidence, and just be understanding and making really clear with supporting evidence to the judges what actual impact that has had on your business. The companies that I worked with, say the hotel, for example, they'd done a whole host of things. They'd actually been able to drill a borehole and were supplying their own water, which then they were reusing glass bottles, and they were just saving on deliveries of water supplies for all of their guests. They had set up their own laundry on site. So again, they were saving having to ship that out. And in fact, they were then generating an additional revenue stream because they were able then to take other people's laundry in and do that. And it was steam powder from the steam, I think the steam iron. They were going to set up a microbrewery, which needs steam as part of that process. So there were a whole host of things beyond some obvious ones. They installed quite early. They were early adopters of electric charging points for cars. They would do things like, for some of their guests where they're located, they would accommodate quite a few people from Tesco's head office in Roche, where they might have business people coming and from out of the area to come and stay for a week and be working on site in head office for a week. And they would have a minibus that would take people to save the impact of the number of cars being on the road. So I don't know if anyone's got any particular queries around that, or any thoughts and observations about what kind of initiatives you could put in that and what impact. But you need to, whatever you're including, you need to show proof of it. So be thinking about what accreditations you've got. I'm just trying to, I went to France recently. We went to a vineyard that's aiming for its organic status, and that was fascinating, some of the things that they do around that. There's some technology that they put on the end of the row of vines that emits some kind of pheromone that detracts moths from settling on the grapevines. So again, it's very hard to know within construction, within the gin distillery, your initiatives are likely to be quite different. But again, it's looking at that and making clear in the last 12 months, you can refer to things that have happened before, but again, make sure you're answering the question so that it's talking about the last 12 months and what key elements of your green agenda in the last 12 months have made that impact, and then work out the best way to prove it. Again, you can do pictures, you can use diagrams, you can use charts. Infographics are really good because it's quite a good way to see at a glance some really clear numbers. And again, that will all make it easy for the judges and make that impact. And Jane's going to talk a little bit about that shortly. And then look at about what the difference has made actually to your business in the last 12 months. So have you saved costs? Have you attracted new clients? Have you engaged with suppliers in a different way? Has that, apart from your reducing your carbon footprint, has that made a difference in terms of efficiencies financially, or in terms of operationally, again, whether that can make a difference to you. So where to begin? I think, and again, this is a great thing to do if you have got that business buddy, trusted business partner, family member, just to start really at the top and say, right, what makes our business really special? And that's a really good way of just starting to hang then the information from those things. So starting with the wow. Think about why choose a sustainable agenda? What was it that drove you to do that? Obviously, the word sustainability has been used for quite some time, but I think, you know, in recent years, and Sue, Jane, you're explaining you've been working in this environment, forgive me, this environment for 27 years. But I think it's becoming more and more popular in terms of actually doing something, particularly the younger generation who look at life in a very different way than perhaps some of us did. It's becoming more and more relevant and more important on everybody's agenda. So again, it's always good to know what it was that made you choose to work in this environment and actually to make some material change on the environment by what you're doing with your business. Do a first draft. Don't worry too much about the word count. Just try and get your story together. And it is storytelling because, you know, it's the once upon a time, but, you know, this business started off, so one that I'm just working on at the moment in the business category is, you know, she started doing this in her first year in temporary premises and she turned over 22,000, and now she's built up to a team of 32 people turning over, you know, X, which is significantly more. Just something that, again, you want to try and give some context for the judges to understand the scale of your business and the reach of your business, but not to spend loads and loads of words on it, but just to give them some ideas so they're coming into your world. Headlines, I've talked about headlines. Just try and get some, you know, big numbers or success stories in there really quickly. And then when you've done the first draft and you've got some headlines, then just apply the so what test. Because often, again, oh, well, you did this, yeah, well, so what? And by chipping away at it, you can then often get into some really good nuggets to say, well, why is that? Why is that significant? Why is that of interest? Why is that of importance? Then look to amendments, edit to the word count. Sometimes you might just need to jiggle it because, again, Emily, I know you'll have had this from other people. Sometimes the word count on my Word document, when I put it into the online form, it just counts it in a slightly different way. So you might just need to tweak that. You know, it's normally a handful of words, but don't be alarmed if you copy it in and go, oh, hang on a minute, it's just told me I've got 600 words and I'm only allowed 500. Proofread it, get someone else to do the same. I know Damien, who set up events and PR, I remember quite a few years ago, he said someone had put in their financial figures on the very first part of the entry form, and they'd put their turnover in and they'd added an extra 0. And then for the rest of the submission, of course, it didn't make any sense whatsoever. So it just lost all credibility with the judges. And that was purely from an errant extra zero, just a keystroke. And it just, so get someone else to have a look at it, because it's much easier to spot mistakes in someone else's work than it is our own sometimes. What's the wow? Again, just go through it one more time. What's the so what? What's the wow? What's really going to make people say, gosh, okay, that's really good. And again, construction we've heard about, gin distillery we've heard about. What is it within that? Because they're not businesses that people will necessarily read about. People are always interested in gin, and people also know currently in the construction world, there's a lot of pain going on in terms of supplies. And so again, some interesting, quite current facts will be interesting. And then you've got to present with pizzazz. So do think about, you could get a designer to design some things for you. Just think about getting some graphs. If you're looking at the financials, again, doing that in a graph with a pie chart in terms of business splits, or, again, it will vary depending on the nature of your business. I tend to, with mine, even though it doesn't ask it, I tend to get my clients to do a forecast if they haven't. For some businesses, they're looking at 3 to 5 years because they're aiming to sell the business or retire. Others might just say, well, we just work on a 1 to 2 year plan because our business is so fast changing. We've not found it effective to look further out than, the next 2 years. But you can put that on a graph as well to forecast it. If you look further back over the performance of your business over a particular, a relevant period, it might be you've established for 10 years or 5 years, you can put the graph in that will show your performance over that period of time. For some businesses that have been in business longer, when you look at the graph of performance from start, there'll be dips and troughs, and that's normal. So any business that just goes in a straight line up in terms of turnover and profit, there's something slightly odd about that, I would suggest. But you can put notes on. So if there is a dip, so clients have invested in new premises, for example, then of course you'll see a dip in the profit, but that's a sensible business thing. Businesses that were around 2008, 2009 for that recession probably will see quite a big drop then. Again, you can just put a note to say that. COVID did have an impact on every business. And depending on the sector, after that initial hit of the first couple of months when there was so much uncertainty, certain businesses have taken a longer time to come out of it, and other businesses that were in a sector, dealt with a business that does home deliveries of furniture. So you might imagine in lockdown, their business actually did really, really well. But again, you can explain it. Business doesn't go in a straight line, and demonstrating a good, sustainable, healthy business is about how you've overcome the obstacles and how you've moved forward again. Right, where is my... So, evidence. I have talked a little bit about this already. You can include links to videos, upload videos. That's a fantastic thing, and more businesses have those. Again, great way of getting across the personality and culture of your business, as well as in a short period for the judges to really get a flavour of what you're doing. Testimonials, get as many as you can. You can then include whole things or snippets. You can think about, if you've got your clients who've done a testimonial, think about including their logo, their business logo, things like that. Again, just bringing it to life with some colour and imagery. We've talked about the financials, any professional associations, they don't just have to be green ones. Websites, marketing collateral, and again, any significant events in your company history. And the very last, the ultimate, you can go into 3 categories. You need to get your business registered, which is Emily's just what she's talked about. Up to 8 finalists per category. Get help if you need it. When you get to finals, that's your chance to start using that for PR. You're a finalist, you've done incredibly well to get to the finals, so shout that from the rooftops and bask in the glory. And if you are successful and you win in this or any other category in Bedfordshire, you will automatically qualify for the national final at Wembley, which Emily's going to talk about just at the end. So were there any more questions for me before I hand over to Jane? No.
When you are doing the entries, does it sort of go into an online box, or can you actually upload, say, a kind of I don't know, an overview or a synopsis of your submission, say in a PDF format?
So the entry form's set up, so there's separate questions. So on the website, everything's submitted through there. So the first couple of tabs on your entry form will be sort of generic company information. So that's where you put in your turnover, just contact details for us. And then you'll have 3 sort of separate tabs for those questions. So one for your business, one for being sustainable, and then one for sustainable impact. And then once you've added in those answers, so like Kate was saying, you can write them on Word and then paste them in afterwards. And then at the very end, you've got the option for attachments. So that's where you'll add your company logo, you'll put in your photos, your videos, any testimonials. But if you did want to do sort of a synopsis of the entry form, that's where you could do it. So you could upload that as a PDF document and sort of keep that separate from your answers if you wanted sort of a few more words on what you've already done, but you didn't want it to count towards your word count.
Okay, lovely, thank you.
So over to Jane.
Okay, I'm actually probably going to reiterate a heck of a lot of what Kate has already said. So the sort of things we're going to be looking for as a judging panel are obviously why. Why have you gone down this route? Is it because you've got supply chain pressure? Is it because your MD all of a sudden had an epiphany? We have had examples of that recently. Certainly, Alan Rance from Midas Patton was watching the David Attenborough programs and just turned around and went, I need to do something about this. The following day, he went into his business and he has transformed it within 18 months, going from really not doing very much at all to having the whole thing. He's got solar panels on his roof. He's reduced his waste. He's got ISO 14001 certification. He's actually talking to his suppliers. He's talking to industry groups. He presents all over the place. He's become a vegan. He's just, wow. Yeah, and it's actually quite astonishing what you can accomplish within quite a short space of time, but he is the managing director. And I appreciate that there are other sort of companies where maybe there are obstacles here and there with various departments, or lack of funding actually as well as another one. Okay, so you've got him, but you've also got other people who certainly, there's another company I know locally who basically said her journey started when she watched a program where she discovered that tea bags contained plastic. And at that point she went, this is ridiculous. What can I do to sort of change my own habits, change the habits within my business to reduce plastics? I think we're all aware of sort of the issues with plastics in the environment. So that's sort of a couple of whys. We have plenty of examples of companies who are basically doing this because they need to tender for contracts. And that is becoming more and more and more of a demand when companies are actually applying to local government for contracts. The demands are actually getting more and more stringent. So that's quite an interesting one as well. Again, we're looking at evidence. What have you done and how? And have you got figures to support that? So that may be something, for instance, you might have reduced your packaging. How have you done that? Are you reusing it? Have you redesigned it so that it's taken an element out of it? We've got certainly one guy who removed all the plastics out of his packaging and used reinforced cardboard instead. He's using paper tape so that when it actually goes to be recycled, you can actually recycle the whole thing and you've not got sort of cellophane or plastic sellotape on there. So it's that type of thing. What else are we looking at? So we're also looking at a range of initiatives you may have taken. So that might involve the transport. How are you getting things to and from your business? Are you journey planning? Are you transforming to an electric fleet? We've got waste. I mean, waste is always a big one. So I would say that you're going to probably score more points for reduction than you are for recycling, or reduction or reuse. Recycling is kind of way down in the desirables. So anything that you've done that's eliminated a waste stream, that's actually, you've found maybe a supplier who can take your waste, what you would consider to be waste, and reuse it for something else. So there's those, potentially what you've done within one of your processes to reduce waste. So have you tweaked something, changed the way you ordered something, so that you're actually generating less waste or using less carbon? Again, carbon reduction, have you installed LED lights? Have you insulated your building, changed your windows, changed your doors, so on and so forth? Those are the sorts of initiatives that probably we're looking at for carbon reduction. We had a printer down in Kempston we worked with, who actually got a grant to replace great big, I'm going back a few years, great big fluorescent tubes, and he had, I think, nearly 300 of them. Replace them with LED lights, and he saved, I think it was £32,000 a year, but also it was a massive amount of carbon. So those are the sorts of figures that kind of bring these things to life. Okay, the other one that you may want to focus on is biodiversity. I know there's a business, Parish Farms, down in, good grief, near Shefford, that have actually they actually grow onions predominantly and other products to go into packaged foods. And what they did to increase biodiversity was basically they built tunnels under their fields so that badgers and other wildlife and foxes could actually wander about and not be trampling their crops. They had wildlife strips all the way down their fields so that they were actually pollinating insects could go and feed. They've done loads actually as a business. Also, you've got organisations like Cranfield University who have actually got wildflower beds all over their campus, and all they do is mow around them and stick a bit of signage up to say this isn't a mess or this isn't because our ground staff are lazy, this is a biodiversity project, and they have a little explanation of why they've done it. So there are all kinds of examples, but that again, if you were going to present that photographically, that would be absolutely brilliant. I would also reiterate what Kate said about talking to other people. I've been into many businesses, and I say to them, what are you doing in terms of your environmental impacts? And they go, oh, we're not doing very much. And when you start to drill down and talk to them, they've actually done loads. They just don't recognize it as being an environmental or sustainability initiative. So definitely talk to other people, have somebody as a sounding board. Moving on, we'll be looking also for the benefits your business has derived out of taking these initiatives. So that may be carbon savings, it may be waste reduction, it may be cost savings. It could be a reduction in your inputs, like something like your packaging or your raw materials. have you been able to reduce those? Because all of these things obviously have an environmental impact. But also it would be interesting if you had a particular obstacle, and we'd not like to know how you overcame that. So, you know, innovation, how are you overcoming the problems that you maybe initially experienced? And we're not necessarily looking for sort of big initiatives. It could be something quite small. There have been a number of companies that have reduced their waste dramatically just by removing people's personal waste bins. And essentially at the end of that, you've got no need for the bins anymore. You've got no need for the plastic bags that go into them. People tend to generate less waste if they can't just chuck it in the bin next to them. It encourages higher recycling rates. It encourages reuse, because instead of chucking a piece of paper in the bin, you might flip it over and use the other side. All of these things are sort of initiatives that smaller companies certainly can take and do very successfully. Okay, have I got anything else? Oh, yeah, we've had other companies that have gone down the route of influencing their own staff. So we've got one company we've had companies who've paid their staff £1 a day to cycle or take public transport or walk to work, rather than, and that by doing that, they've actually reduced the congestion around their site, which obviously is a problem on many estates. That's also had a knock-on effect for some businesses where they've been able to lease part of their car park out to other companies. So that's actually generated an income from the action that they've taken. Okay, I'm just trying to think of other examples that I've got. Oh, one thing I would say is do not make your submission generic. So I don't want to hear we recycle or we follow the waste hierarchy. Concrete examples are always far more interesting and more engaging than actually just hearing we do this. It's not fascinating. Most people actually do recycle. It's pretty much a requirement. Okay.
So that's what I was saying with the so what.
Yeah.
The so what test. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
And
yeah. Yeah. So we also, yeah, I'm just trying to sort of dredge up a few more examples. There's another company we know that actually pays their staff or gives their staff additional holidays, so extra days if they're traveling by some form of public transport to wherever they're going. So to reduce flights and the carbon associated with that. There are just tons of things that people have done, actually quite innovative, quite imaginative. There's another company that has a day every year where they encourage people to get to work without their cars. Just general initiatives that other companies can replicate as well, because we're, as a network, we're very much about sharing ideas, sharing best practice. I guess the other one that I've not touched on is water reduction. And I know that Willow Tree are very hot on that one. But even water has an embedded carbon element in it. And also we are one of the driest areas of the country here.
Yeah.
So water scarcity is going to be an increasing problem and actually isn't great at the moment. So anything that businesses can do to reduce their water usage is brilliant. I think that's kind of about me anyway, because I think a lot of what I would have sort of said I was looking for has already been covered by Kate anyway, in actually enormous detail. And yes, that is what we're looking for. We're looking for wow, we're looking for innovation, but it doesn't have to be a massive project costing loads of money. It could just be that you've been working with your staff and this is what you've been doing. So that's about it from me, really.
Okay, that's great, thank you, and some really good examples.